The poison was tasteless. The choice was impossible. And the man she was supposed to fear was standing in the doorway, watching her cry. Patricia pressed her trembling face against the silk shirts hanging in Soan's walk-in closet. The expensive fabric smelling of cedar and sandalwood and money she'd never touch in 3 lifetimes. Desperately trying to muffle the sobs that kept tearing through her chest like broken glass cutting from the inside out. Her fingers were wrapped so tightly around the miniature red Air Jordans that her knuckles had gone bone white. And the custom-made ivory suit jacket, perfectly tailored, never worn, felt like it weighed more than her entire body, more than her soul, more than the debt that was killing her sister slowly in a hospital bed across Lagos. When the door didn't just open, but exploded inward, kicked off its hinges with a violence that sent splinters of mahogany skittering across marble, flooding the intimate darkness with harsh light that made her squeeze her eyes shut in pure, devastating mortification, Patricia knew her carefully constructed world had just shattered beyond any hope of repair. Standing there in the doorway, filling the entire frame with his 6 feet 3 inches presence that always made the air feel thinner and more dangerous, was Soan himself. The Viper. The most feared Mafia boss on the entire west coast of Africa. The man whose home she cleaned every morning at exactly 6:45 in silence because he didn't trust conversation. The man whose cold obsidian eyes could make grown men weep and beg and confess to sins they hadn't even committed yet. Standing there shirtless with scars scaling up his neck and across his chest, his hand still gripping the door handle like he was ready to rip it completely off. But Patricia wasn't holding poison. She was holding his dead son's shoes. And the look on his face wasn't fury. It was something far more dangerous. Calculation. Why was his maid crying over a child she barely knew? Who sent her? And what did she want? Before I continue, please take a moment to subscribe. My husband said I can't reach 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove him wrong. Thanks for subscribing. Soan didn't ask if she was okay. He asked if she was crying because her mission succeeded or because it failed. His voice was a whip crack.
Low. Deadly.
Utterly devoid of pity. Patricia,
Tell me now.
are you crying because your mission succeeded or because you failed? Patricia couldn't speak. Her mouth was dry. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it would burst through her ribs. She couldn't tell him the truth. That she was crying for his son. For Noah. The 6-year-old boy who died 3 weeks ago from an illness so aggressive, so unprecedented, that doctors called it impossible. Because how do you tell a mafia boss that you, a nobody, a maid drowning in medical debt, were mourning his child? It sounded insane. It sounded like the pathetic lie of a desperate woman. So she said nothing. And that silence was the worst thing she could have done. Soan stepped into the closet. His hand shot out, wrapping around her wrist like iron wrapped in velvet. He dragged her out of the closet, not gently, down the hallway, past the opulent glass and steel, past the vibrant African art that used to make Noah laugh. He dragged her into his office. A cavernous space that looked more like a security hub than a place of business. Monitors lined the walls. Holographic maps shimmered above his desk. Weapons were mounted in glass cases like trophies. Sit. He pointed to a hardback chair. She sat. He didn't. He stood over her, coiled, ready to spring. Who sent you? Was it the lion? Did he promise you an antidote? Or did he just promise to clear your debts? Patricia's blood turned to ice. How did he know about her debts? How did he know about her sister Kemi? I know everything about you, Soan said, reading her face like a book. Medical debt for a sister named Kemi. You've been working 3 jobs. Sleeping 4 hours a night. You're desperate. Perfect leverage. He leaned down, his face inches from hers. So tell me the truth. Or I will wipe out your sister's medical files from every system in this city. And she will be invisible to help. The threat was ice cold, terrifyingly real. Patricia felt a wave of nausea crash over her. But she knew if she confessed her true grief, he would dismiss her as insane, and her desperate need for money would vanish. She lowered her gaze. "Please, sir, I have nothing to tell you." Sohn leaned back. A predatory smile touched his lips. "Good. You're a professional. I can respect that." He walked to his desk, pressed a button, and two men entered the room. Massive.
Armed. Silent.
"You won't kill me," Sohn said. "You'll stay close. Close enough that if you make a move, you won't live long enough to see the outcome." Patricia's life had just become a nightmare. She was no longer a maid. She was a prisoner, and the man who held her captive thought she was an assassin. But the real horror? She had no idea that the truth was far darker than either of them could imagine. Days bled into each other. Patricia was forced to accompany Sohn everywhere within the compound. She stood silently behind his chair during tense meetings with men whose names she didn't know but whose violence she could feel radiating off them like heat. She watched him, not as a maid, but as an unwilling intimate. She saw the moments when his iron control slipped, the way his fingers ghosted over the keys of the piano Noah used to play, the way he would suddenly stop talking mid-sentence, his eyes distant, lost in a grief that felt bottomless. One evening, after the associates had left, Patricia found Sohn staring out over the glittering Lagos skyline. On a small expensive side table was a silver candelabra. It held a single white candle, a memorial that was supposed to burn perpetually for Noah. It had gone out, probably from a draft. Without thinking, and with no audience, Patricia walked over.
She didn't speak.
She didn't look at Sohn. She simply picked up a lighter from the desk and, with steady hands, relit the candle. The small flame instantly restored a flickering warmth to the immense room. She then returned to her designated corner, waiting for him to notice, to explode. Sohn didn't move for a long minute. Then, very slowly, he turned his head and looked at the flame. Then at Patricia.
"Why?"
His inner voice screamed. Why would an agent of my enemy care about my son's memory? Why would a trained operative commit such a small, unnecessary act of mercy? The logical explanation, she was softening him up, didn't quite fit the silent, genuine way she had done it. For the first time, Sohn felt a hairline crack appear in his wall of certainty. He kept silent, but the incident hung in the air.
Thick. Confusing.
Like smoke that wouldn't clear. And Patricia? She didn't know it yet, but that single act of lighting a candle had just saved her life. The following week, Sohn took Patricia to an ultra-secure safe house for a meeting with his most trusted inner circle. He seated her at a small table just behind him, an intentional display of his control over the new asset. The men around the table were wolves.
Hardened. Scarred.
Loyal. But one of them, a massive man named Kofi with a surprisingly gentle face, offered his condolences. The boy's death was a great tragedy, boss. Especially the way it happened. Sohn's jaw tightened. It was an illness, Kofi. A fast, aggressive illness. Yes, boss. Aggressive, Kofi agreed, a little too quickly. Doctors say it was unprecedented. They had no time to formulate a response. Like something custom-made. The phrase hung in the air.
Custom-made.
Patricia felt a sickening jolt in her stomach.
Custom-made.
Not natural. Not random. Engineered. She glanced at Sohn. His face was stone. But his hand on the table had curled into a fist, so tight his knuckles were white. That night, in the relative safety of the guest room she was confined to, Patricia risked everything. She used a small smuggled burner tablet, accessing her sister Kemi's heavily encrypted medical files. She looked at the doctor's notes describing Kemi's rapid onset of bizarre, untreatable symptoms. Rapid muscle degradation. Neurological disruption. A fatal systemic shutdown. Then she cross-referenced the few public reports available on Noah Sohn's death. Reports that were heavily censored by the family. The symptoms matched. Not generally, but specifically. The same rare, targeted virus. Patricia's hands began to shake. Noah's death wasn't a tragedy. It was an assassination. And the rival Mafia, the Lion, wasn't just targeting Sohn. They were using biological warfare against the families of their enemies, creating a weaponized illness. Her sister, Kemi, was not randomly ill. She was another unintended, innocent casualty of the Lion's research. Patricia was huddled over the tablet, researching the origins of the virus, when the door to her room slid open. Sohn stood there, impeccably dressed, radiating cold fury. "You're a fool, Patricia. Did you think I wouldn't track the traffic to a personal device on my network? Let me see." He crossed the room in 2 strides, ripping the tablet from her hands. His eyes scanned the screen, instantly recognizing the complex data structure of a hospital report. He expected to see his own files, military plans, bank codes. Instead, he saw the image of a young woman hooked up to life support. And the name, Kemi Ajayi. "Who is this?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Patricia, exhausted and terrified, finally broke. She didn't try to lie. The truth felt like the only currency left. "That's my sister, Kemi. The debt, sir, it's for her. She's been sick for 4 months. She was fine and then this. The doctors say it's unheard of. They're waiting for her to die." Her voice cracked. "When Kofi said your son's death was custom-made, I checked. The symptoms, the pathology, it's the same, Sohn. It's the exact same disease that killed Noah." She collapsed onto the floor, the full weight of her hidden grief and terror crushing her. "I wasn't crying over your loss, sir. Not really. I was crying over his sneakers because I know Kemi's shoes are next. The red Jordans. My tears were for the innocent boy who is gone and the innocent girl who is dying. I'm not a killer. I'm just a terrified sister who needs an antidote." Sohn looked from the crying woman on the floor to the tablet showing the face of a dying girl. His Mafia instincts warred with a primal, agonizing recognition. The image of Kemi was a mirror image of his own powerlessness over Noah. The same disease. The same engineered hopelessness. He knelt down, his size dwarfing her. He didn't touch her, but his voice was suddenly stripped of all its venom, revealing a raw, devastating sorrow. "The Lion," he whispered. "They weren't just testing the weapon on me. They were mass-producing it." He looked at her, his eyes blazing with a new kind of intensity. "Your sister is the proof I needed. I believe you, Patricia. Now, tell me everything. Every symptom. Every doctor's note. You need an antidote. I need vengeance." The dynamic shifted violently. Sohn had moved from ruthless interrogator to obsessive protector. He assigned his 2 best men to watch over Kemi's hospital room. Not to guard Patricia, but to protect her leverage. "Your sister is safe. She is now under my banner," Sohn declared, pacing his office. "The Lion will not touch her. I will find the antidote, but you will earn it." He laid out the pact. He would finance Kemi's treatment and protection. In return, Patricia would use her invisible status as a maid to infiltrate the rival's operations. Your ability to observe without being seen, your empathy, and your quiet demeanor are not flaws, Patricia. They are high-level intelligence assets. He pulled up a holographic map. The Lion's main operation runs out of a subsidiary pharmaceutical company. They are hiding the final antidote in the penthouse office of his second-in-command, a man named Femi. He trusts no one. Sohn looked into her eyes, no longer seeing a suspect, but a woman with a dangerous mix of desperation and intelligence. "You are no longer my prisoner, Patricia. You are my weapon. Your tears will be my shield. Get me the antidote formula, and your sister will walk free." Patricia, motivated by a desperate love and a rising fury against the men who had killed Noah and were killing Kemi, nodded firmly. "I will do it." But neither of them knew that the real betrayal was already sitting at Sohn's table. And his name was Kofi. Friday came. Patricia, dressed in the uniform of the rival company's contract cleaning service, was a master of silent movement. Years of service in the high-stakes world of the wealthy had taught her exactly where to look and where not to look. She successfully bypassed 4 layers of digital and human security, using the cover of a spilled coffee emergency to gain access to the secure penthouse office. Femi's office was opulent but sparse. While cleaning, Patricia located the hidden safe where the final research was stored. Her heart hammering, she used the microscanner Sohn had given her, downloading the entire file onto a small, discreet thumb drive hidden in her hair. Just as the transfer completed, Femi walked in, speaking urgently on his phone. Patricia froze, maintaining the pose of wiping down a shelf. Femi wasn't talking about Sohn. He was talking about Kofi. I told you, the lion wants the transfer done at the tea house. Kofi will be alone. He thinks he's getting a promotion, but he's getting a retirement package. His role is done. We needed access, and Sohn's little rat gave it to us. Femi laughed. A harsh, dry sound. Tell Kofi the salt shaker is a gift from the boss. And make sure he activates it at exactly 7 p.m. Patricia's mind reeled. Kofi, Sohn's trusted lieutenant. The man who had been so sympathetic about Noah's death. He wasn't just a mole. He was the one who had facilitated the lion's access. And he was about to set off a bomb. Patricia returned to Sohn, physically exhausted but mentally electric. She handed him the thumb drive. It's all here, sir. The complete antidote formula. Sohn barely glanced at it. His focus was entirely on her face. And what else did you see, Patricia? She hesitated. Her conscience is fighting her survival instinct. Kofi had been kind, in his own strange way. He was an empathetic man caught in a terrible game. I heard Femi on the phone. He was talking about a meeting at the Golden Tea House at 7 p.m. He mentioned a gift, a salt shaker. And he mentioned Kofi. Sohn didn't flinch. He walked over to a bank of monitors and pulled up a feed of a high-end tea house from 2 days prior. The screen showed Kofi sitting at a table with a man Patricia didn't recognize. Kofi accepted a small, decorative silver salt shaker and placed it in his inner coat pocket. I knew Kofi was the rat, Sohn said, his voice flat. He's always been too soft. Too focused on family when he should have been focused on loyalty. The data you brought is the distraction, Patricia. The real question is not who betrayed me, but who you are loyal to now. Sohn fixed her with a hard stare. Kofi's bomb is set to go off at 7 p.m. tonight, during a fake meeting I set up. Kofi will be there. The lion thinks he's assassinating me, but he's just clearing house. You know Kofi is a good man, Patricia. He mourned my son with genuine pain. The empathy you felt in the closet, you feel for Kofi now. Will you warn him? He was testing her again. Not for espionage, but for her soul. Would she choose the empathetic man who is secretly dangerous, or the ruthless monster who is openly protective? Patricia looked at the picture of her sister, Kemi, that Sohn kept pinned on his board now. And she thought of Noah's empty sneakers. Kofi is a dead man walking either way, sir, she said, her voice steady. But he allowed the weapon into this family. He allowed the lion to kill your son and almost kill my sister. He needs to be neutralized before he hurts anyone else. My loyalty is to the antidote and to Kemi.
Sohn nodded slowly.
A deep satisfaction settling in his eyes.
Correct.
Now let's prepare the stage. The Golden Tea House was deserted. Sohn and Patricia arrived first. Sohn is wearing a heavy ballistic vest beneath his traditional kaftan. Kofi is too smart for a simple gunfight, Sohn murmured to Patricia. We need chaos. We need a show. Kofi arrived promptly at 6:55 p.m., looking nervous but determined. He saw Patricia standing next to Sohn, wearing an expensive dress Sohn had bought her. The maid? Kofi frowned. Why is she here, boss? She is my new asset, Kofi. And you are here for your reward, Sohn said, giving Kofi a cold, predatory smile. Kofi's face flushed. He knew the reward was death. As he reached into his jacket pocket, ready to activate the salt shaker, Son raised his voice. "You will never have her, Kofi. She's mine." Son seized Patricia, pulling her against his chest in a rough, urgent motion. He kissed her. A hard, possessive, confusing kiss that was entirely for the benefit of Kofi's confusion and any listening devices. Kofi watched the bizarre display, momentarily stunned by the chaos. He registered the genuine panic and confusion in Patricia's eyes. That was the opening Son needed. As Kofi's finger moved to activate the shaker, Son thrust Patricia away and lunged. Not for the shaker, but for Kofi's elbow. A swift, brutal break. Kofi screamed, and the salt shaker clattered harmlessly to the floor, rolling to a stop, its timer still ticking down to 0. The remaining minutes until 7 p.m. were a desperate, silent battle. Son, a man possessed by vengeance, was lethal and efficient. He disarmed Kofi, and by the time the timer hit 60 seconds, Kofi was restrained. "The antidote, Patricia," Son ordered, his breath coming in ragged gasps.
"Now."
Patricia, whose hand had been sweating around the tiny flash drive all evening, placed it in Son's hand. The antidote was finally safe. As the device hit 0 and detonated a harmless smoke charge, Son had hired a chemical expert to neuter the bomb. They were already gone, vanishing into the night with the prize. But the real battle wasn't over. The lion was still out there.
And he knew Son was coming.
Back at the penthouse, Son's tech team began analyzing the antidote formula. What they found made Patricia's blood run cold. "Boss," the lead technician said, his face pale. "This formula, it's not just an antidote. It's a suppression agent. It doesn't cure the disease. It delays it." The lion was planning to create a dependency market. Sell the suppressant to families for life. Son's eyes went dark. They were going to turn my son's death into a business model. He turned to Patricia. "The lion isn't just a rival. He's a monster. And we're going to end him." But there was another problem. The formula was incomplete. Critical elements were missing. And, according to the notes, the final piece was held by the lion himself, in a location even Femi didn't know. "We need to draw him out," Son said. "And the only bait he'll take is me." Patricia stepped forward.
"No."
"The only bait he'll take is proof that the antidote failed. Proof that Kemi is dying." Son looked at her, understanding dawning. "You want to fake her death?" "I want to stage her collapse," Patricia corrected. "Publicly. At the hospital. Let the lion think his weapon is unstoppable. He'll come to gloat. And when he does, we'll have him." It was a dangerous gamble, but it was the only play they had left. 3 days later, Patricia stood in Kemi's hospital room, holding her sister's hand. Kemi, who had been briefed on the plan, looked terrified but determined. "You trust him?" Kemi whispered, referring to Son. Patricia nodded. "With our lives." The plan was set. Kemi would receive a harmless sedative that would mimic the final stages of the disease. The hospital, infiltrated by Son's men, would declare her in critical condition. And the lion, monitoring hospital records through his network, would take the bait. At precisely 3 p.m., Kemi collapsed. Monitors flatlined. Doctors rushed in. Patricia screamed. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. And within 2 hours, the lion made his move. A message arrived at Son's secure line. "Meet me at the old pharmaceutical plant. Midnight.
Come alone.
Or the girl dies for real." Son looked at Patricia. "He doesn't know she's already dead." Patricia smiled grimly. "Then let's show him a ghost." The old pharmaceutical plant was a decaying monument to corruption. Rusted equipment, broken windows, shadows that seemed to move on their own. Son arrived first, flanked by Patricia.
She was armed now.
No longer a maid. No longer a prisoner. A warrior. The lion emerged from the darkness.
Tall.
Silver-haired. Impeccably dressed. He looked more like a corporate CEO than a mafia boss, which made him more dangerous. "Sown," the lion said, his voice smooth. "I heard about the girl. Tragic. Another innocent lost to the cruel realities of our world."
Sown didn't respond.
He just stared. The lion continued. "You want the full antidote. I have it, but it will cost you. Your territory, your network, your legacy, everything you built. And if I refuse?"
Sown asked.
The lion smiled. "Then the girl's death will be the first of many. I've already distributed samples of the virus to 12 other families across Lagos. Mothers, fathers, children, all infected, all waiting for a cure only I can provide." Patricia felt rage boil in her veins. This wasn't just about power. It was about genocide.
Slow.
Profitable. Genocide. "You're a monster," she said. The lion turned to her, noticing her for the first time. "And you are the maid who cried in a closet. How poetic." He pulled out a small vial. "The complete antidote. This is your choice, Sown. Your empire or their lives." Sown took a step forward. "I choose neither." And then chaos erupted. Sown's men, hidden in the shadows, opened fire. But the lion was prepared. His own mercenaries emerged, turning the plant into a war zone. Patricia dove behind a rusted boiler, her weapon drawn. She saw Sown fighting hand-to-hand with one of the lion's men. Brutal, efficient,
Deadly.
but the lion was escaping, running toward the back exit, the vial still in his hand. Patricia didn't think. She just ran, faster than she'd ever run in her life. She tackled the lion from behind, sending them both crashing to the ground. The vial flew from his hand, skittering across the concrete. They both scrambled for it. The lion's hand closed around it first, but Patricia's hand closed around his wrist. They struggled. And then Patricia did something she'd never done before. She broke his fingers. The lion screamed. The vial dropped. Patricia grabbed it and rolled away, clutching it to her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. Because it was. Sown appeared, breathing hard, blood on his knuckles. He looked down at the lion, writhing in pain. "You wanted my empire," Sown said quietly. "But you forgot one thing. I don't just build empires. I protect families." He raised his weapon and ended the lion's reign. 6 months later, the lion's network had been systematically dismantled. Femi was in prison. Kofi was simply gone. And the pharmaceutical company had been seized and repurposed. Now a state-of-the-art research facility dedicated to eradicating the synthetic disease. Kemi was safe. The antidote had worked. She was in a quiet university abroad, thriving, with Sown's protection ensuring her anonymity. Patricia was no longer a maid. She was Sown's executive advisor, managing the philanthropic side of his legitimate businesses. The part focused on helping the innocent, the victims of his world. One evening, Patricia found Sown in the master walk-in closet. The silk shirts and cedar scent were gone. The room was empty, save for a simple leather club chair and a small mahogany side table. He was sitting there, holding the small pair of red Air Jordans. The only light in the room coming from the single, flickering candle Patricia always ensured was lit. 6 months, he murmured, his gaze on the sneakers. "I haven't cried since Noah left."
I don't know how.
Patricia walked over and sat on the arm of the chair. She didn't offer comfort or platitudes. "You don't have to," she said quietly. "You took the antidote and gave it to me. You fought the man who killed your son and saved my sister. You turned your rage into protection. You are a different kind of man now, Sown." She reached out and placed her hand over his, covering the small shoes. "Your tears were never for my son, were they, Patricia?" he asked, his voice low and heavy. "No," she confessed softly. "They were for what you became after he left. A shattered man. A monster who needed someone to show him how to fight for good instead of just revenge. Son finally looked at her, his dark eyes intense, stripped of all the old suspicion. He was no longer the cruel boss, but the ruthless protector. He set the shoes down and drew her into his lap, his arms wrapping around her with a possessive strength that felt like the safest place in the world. "Look at me, Patricia. What do you see?" Patricia leaned her head against his chest, listening to the heavy, steady rhythm of his heart. A heart that had learned to heal. "My life," she whispered. "I see my life, and I see the man who saved it." Son pressed a kiss to her forehead, not possessive, not desperate, but tender. The kind of kiss that promised tomorrow. "And I see the woman who reminded me why I fight," he murmured against her hair. "Not for power, not for revenge, but for the innocent, for the Noahs of this world who deserve to grow up, and for the Chemis who deserve to live." They sat there in the candlelight, two broken people who had found healing in the most unexpected place, in each other's scars. Outside, Lagos glittered like scattered diamonds. A city of millions. A city that would never know that a maid's tears had saved them all. But Patricia and Son knew.
And that was enough.
If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe. My husband challenged me to reach 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove him wrong. Thanks for subscribing.